My name is Marina Hale, 33 years old. The night the police called to say they had found someone waiting outside the door of my safe house, I was sitting on the edge of a narrow bed trying to convince myself that the worst was over. My phone lit up with a notification from an unknown number, then with a message from my advocate, Simone. By the time I called back, my hands were so slick with sweat that I nearly dropped the phone. Ms. Hale, we need you to stay inside and away from the windows, the officer said. We have units in the parking lot. Someone has been loitering near your door. We already engaged with him. I did what I always do in a crisis. I went very still. The air in the room thickened. The white walls, the generic framed flower print, the beige curtain over the balcony door, all of it seemed to tilt. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Later, I would learn exactly how he had found me, that my own sister had turned my safe house into content, that she had pointed a camera at the building that was supposed to be invisible and said to the internet, "Look, my sister is fine. She is just being dramatic." But to understand how we got there, I have to go back to before the safe house, before the restraining order, before the bruise on my ribs bloomed yellow and purple. Back to when I still believed that the people who said they loved me would protect me by default. I have worked as a healthcare claims processor for nearly a decade. It is the kind of job people describe as stable and dull. Endless forms, diagnosis codes, cross-checking dates of service with policy limits. My cubicle is gray and forgettable, tucked between identical gray walls and humming computers. The work suits me. I like patterns. I like having rules to follow and a trail to trace. My younger sister Kelsey is the opposite. 29, big laugh, bigger personality, a job in influencer management that sounds made up to my parents and magical to everyone else. She has always known how to turn every room into a stage and every inconvenience into a story. Our parents, Linda and Warren, own a successful landscaping company. They call me our steady one and Kelsey our star. They do not say which one they prefer. They do not have to. 4 years ago, before any of this, I met Brandon at a medical conference fundraiser. He was a medical device sales representative, the kind of man who seemed built for hotel ballrooms and networking events. He knew how to stand just close enough to make you feel seen and just far enough not to trigger your alarms. He laughed at my dry jokes. He remembered my coffee order. He listened when I talked about work as if spreadsheets were fascinating. We moved fast. Within months, we were spending most nights together. After 7 months, he moved into my townhouse. That was when the version of him I had been dating began to peel away at the edges. "Marina, why did you not text me back?" he asked one night, the first week he officially lived there. He stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, jaw tight. "I was in a meeting," I said. "I cannot answer my phone in the middle of staff updates." "Was Derek there?" he pressed. "From accounting, the one who always laughs at your jokes." "It is a staff meeting. The whole team is there." Conversations like that became our daily routine. He wanted to know who I sat next to in meetings, who I ate lunch with, who I emailed after hours. He started popping up at my office unannounced with takeout, smiling in front of my coworkers, then grilling me in the car on the way home about why I had been laughing with Andrew by the break room. At first, everyone thought it was sweet. "He is so devoted," my colleagues said. "You are so lucky." I knew better by the 4th time he leaned over my shoulder at my desk to see who was messaging me, fingers digging just a little too hard into my chair. The financial control came next, disguised as practicality. "You should add me to your checking account," he said one Saturday morning, stretching on the couch as if it was nothing. "In case of emergencies. What if something happens and I need to cover a bill for us?" I hesitated, then told myself that partners share things. Within 6 weeks, I started seeing charges I did not recognize, fancy dinners he had never invited me to, designer clothes that did not end up in our closet, electronics I had never touched. "Are you accusing me of something?" he exploded when I asked about a $700 charge. "I'm asking what it is for," I said, voice careful. "It is our money. I buy things for us, Marina. Or are you too selfish to see that?" After that, every question became an accusation in his mind. Every boundary I tried to draw became proof that I did not love him enough. During arguments, he would punch the wall next to my head, close enough that drywall dust rained down on my hair, never quite touching me. Then his face would crumple. He would drop to his knees, sobbing, promising he would never lose control like that again, insisting he would never actually hurt me. The cycle sped up. Weekly blow-ups became daily ones. I started documenting everything. the way I would track a suspicious claim at work. I took photos of holes in the walls. I wrote down his words in a notebook after every argument. I logged dates and times. No audio, no video, just my handwriting, line after line, a neat ledger of chaos. 8 months ago, the escalation finally broke something literal. Brandon had been fired for harassing a female coworker. He came home furious, eyes wild, blaming me because I had made him paranoid about women by always assuming the worst about men. That night, he grabbed my phone and hurled it across the living room. Then he shoved me hard into the entertainment center. The impact knocked the breath out of me. A hot, sharp pain shot through my side. I heard a sickening crack. "This is your fault," he shouted. "You push me into this. You always push." I remember thinking, through the pain, I did not push anything. I just existed. The next morning, while he was at the gym, I moved on autopilot. I tucked my passport and birth certificate into my bag. I slipped my laptop inside, along with my notebook full of dates and quotes and photographs. I drove to the police station with my fingers clenched so tightly around the steering wheel that my knuckles ached. Filing the report felt like stepping off a cliff. The officer who took my statement did not roll his eyes. He did not ask what I had done to provoke Brandon. He listened. He read my notes. He arranged for an emergency protective order and introduced me to a domestic violence advocate named Simone Richardson. Simone was calm in the way that comes from having seen too much. She moved through the paperwork like someone who knows exactly how much danger sits behind polite smiles. She was the one who mentioned the safe house. "We have a shelter program that can place you somewhere secure," she said. "It is not fancy, but it is safe. The most important thing is that the address is confidential." When we pulled up to the building in Sterling Heights, it looked like every other modest apartment complex in that part of town. 2 bedrooms, basic furniture, a parking lot lined with tired shrubs. Inside, the walls were bare. The kitchen was small but functional. There was a lock on the front door and another one on the bedroom. "Your location cannot be shared with anyone," Simone said, dark eyes serious. "Not your parents, not your sister, not friends, not online. This address is what keeps you alive." "I understand," I whispered. I meant it. I took medical leave from work, citing health reasons. That part was simple. I had 2 cracked ribs and bruises that painted my torso in sick colors. I sat on the safe house couch, phone pressed to my ear, and told my parents that I had left Brandon and was somewhere safe, but I could not tell them where yet. My dad, Warren, sounded more shaken than I expected. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" he asked. "Do you need money? Do you want me to do anything?" "I am okay, Dad," I said. "I just need time." My mother, Linda, was different. "Are you sure you are not blowing this out of proportion?" she asked. "Brandon has always been so polite when we have seen him." "He sent me to urgent care with cracked ribs," I said. "Well, relationships are complicated, honey. Maybe you both need counseling. A neutral person to help you communicate." Classic mom, I thought. If something is ugly, slap a nice word on it and hope it behaves. Kelsey called 3 days after I moved in. Her voice was bright, annoyed, like she was calling about a dress I had borrowed without asking. "So you just walked out," she said. "You abandoned him without even trying to fix things." "Kelsey, he assaulted me," I said. "I have cracked ribs." "Okay, but what did you do to provoke him?" she asked. "You can be pretty cold sometimes, Marina." I stared at the blank white wall in front of me. "Are you actually blaming me right now?" "I am just saying you always play the victim," she replied. "Remember college? When you claimed that guy Cody was stalking you and it turned out to be nothing." It had not been nothing. Cody had followed me between classes and waited outside my apartment until campus police escorted him away. But Kelsey had told our parents I was exaggerating for attention. That had been the pattern. Me raising alarms, her smoothing things over by calling me dramatic. "I am not having this conversation with you," I said, and I hung up. In the weeks that followed, I focused on breathing without wincing. Simone checked in regularly. She helped me file for a permanent restraining order and set up therapy sessions with a psychologist named Dr. Nena Castellano. In therapy, I started learning how many years I had spent doubting my own perception because it did not match other people's comfort. Meanwhile, Brandon began crafting his own story. On Instagram, he wrote long paragraphs about how I had abandoned him in his darkest hour. Mutual acquaintances liked his posts about heartbreak and resilience. Some of them messaged me to suggest that maybe I could hear him out. Kelsey found her own angle. She texted me articles about the power of forgiveness and sent quotes about couples communication. When I stopped responding, she pushed harder. "You are being ridiculous," read one afternoon message. "Brandon came by Mom and Dad's house yesterday. He seems genuinely remorseful. He really wants to work things out." My blood ran cold. "He came to their house?" I texted back. "Did they let him in?" "Well, yes," she replied. "He wanted to talk about you. He is really torn up about everything." I called my parents immediately. "Why are you letting Brandon into your house when he has a restraining order?" I demanded. "He just wanted to talk," my mother said, defensive. "He seems very apologetic." "He is not supposed to contact me or my immediate family," I said. "Well, technically he did not contact you," my father added. "He just wanted to explain his side." I felt the ground tilt again. The safe house walls suddenly seemed thinner. The lock on the door suddenly felt smaller. I documented the violation and told Simone, who contacted Brandon's probation officer. He received a formal warning. My parents were angry at me for making trouble. Kelsey called it overkill. I lay awake that night in the safe house, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere across town, my parents were sitting at their dining table with the man who had broken my ribs, listening to his perspective. My sister was defending him in group chats I was not in. The protective order on paper was strong. The protection inside my own family was paper thin. I did not know it yet, but the next time my location would be compromised, it would not be because Brandon forced his way past a lock. It would be because Kelsey opened the door with her phone and invited the whole world to take a look. For the next few weeks, I lived in a kind of uneasy quiet. Not safety, quiet. Safety implies trust, and I didn't have that anymore. Not in anything or anyone. But the days passed without phone calls from Brandon's mother, without angry messages from his friends, without police knocking on the safe house door. I could breathe without my ribs screaming. For the first time in years, I woke up in the morning and didn't immediately brace myself for the sound of someone pacing outside the bedroom. Simone checked in every few days. Dr. Castellano helped me untangle the knots in my head, the ones tied by years of minimizing and deflecting and making myself smaller so that other people wouldn't get upset. I wasn't healing yet. Not really. But I was starting to recognize the shape of the damage. But peace with no trust is just a countdown. And I didn't know the explosion was coming until the first piece of debris landed at my feet. It started with a silver Honda Civic. I'm not someone who usually pays attention to cars. But when you spend your days hyper-aware of every creaking floorboard, every elevator ding, every footstep in the hallway, your senses sharpen on their own. The silver Civic appeared one morning in the far corner of the lot. Nothing suspicious at first. Lots of people drove neutral-colored compact cars. It blended right in. Except it stayed. Morning after morning, sometimes evening after evening, parked in the same spot, or close enough that it felt intentional. One afternoon, I returned from picking up a prescription and found a note under my windshield wiper. A single sheet of printer paper, no envelope. "I see you." I stood there in the parking lot, the wind blowing hair across my face, hands trembling so hard I could hardly keep hold of the paper. The words felt like a hand around my throat. I reported it immediately. Simone contacted the police, but without a witness or camera footage or a clear link to Brandon, there was little they could do beyond logging it. "Document everything," she reminded me. Everything. I had already been doing that, but this time I took photos of the note, photos of the parking lot, photos of the silver Civic in the background. I texted myself a timestamp. I recorded the interaction with the property manager, where he shrugged helplessly, apologizing that the complex didn't have exterior cameras. Every minor detail became part of a growing file. The detective assigned to monitor my restraining order violation had already warned me. People who lose control often escalate before they give up. Still, I tried to reassure myself. It could have been a prank, someone else entirely, a coincidence. Then I saw the Mustang. I had gone to my P.O. box downtown to retrieve forwarded mail. I was locking my car when a familiar engine growl echoed down the street. A black Ford Mustang rolled past the curb, moving slowly enough that I could clearly see the shape of the driver's shoulders, the tilt of his head, the angle of his jaw. Brandon. I froze. My chest tightened until I could barely exhale. He drove past again, making a U-turn at the end of the block, slowing like he was searching for something. No, searching for someone. I ducked behind a blue USPS drop box, heart hammering hard enough to hurt. He didn't stop. He didn't say anything. But he was close enough that I could see the scratch on the rear bumper I remembered from when he backed into a dumpster months ago. He couldn't have found me by accident. He shouldn't have known I was anywhere near downtown. The safe house was 45 minutes from my old neighborhood, off exits I had never taken before, hidden in a cluster of identical beige buildings. The address wasn't attached to my name in any system my family could access. Someone had told him something. My first instinct was to call Simone, but I waited until I had driven far away, checking my mirrors every few seconds, pulse pounding. When I finally made it back to the safe house, I shut every curtain and triple-checked the locks. I paced the living room like an animal, replaying every conversation I'd had with my parents, with Kelsey, with anyone. I opened my social media accounts, even the ones I hadn't touched in months, checking for leaks. I Googled my own name, expecting to find nothing but old work conference photos. But something new appeared. A video. A TikTok with my sister's username. The thumbnail alone made my mouth dry. Kelsey smiling in front of a beige apartment complex. The exact shade, the exact architecture of my safe house building. In the background, blurry but unmistakable, was the number 3847 mounted above the walkway. The caption read, "Visiting my sister at her adorable new place. Hashtag fresh starts, hashtag Sisters Day, hashtag Sterling Heights love." 42,000 followers. Public. Tagged to a location. My heart began pounding so violently I thought I might pass out. My hand went numb around my phone. I watched the video on mute because I couldn't bear to hear her voice. She did a little spin, gestured at the building as if showing off a restaurant or tourist spot. "She's finally moved somewhere cute," she'd written in the text overlay. I felt the world drop out from under me. She had shown the entire internet where I lived. She had posted the number to the building. She had tagged the neighborhood. She had presented my safe house like it was a brunch backdrop. To prove I was fine. To prove I was exaggerating. To prove she was right. I called her immediately. The phone rang 3 times before she answered, voice bright and careless. "Hey, Mar, did you see the—" "You posted what online?" My voice cracked. "Oh, relax," she sighed. "It's just TikTok. Your whole damsel in distress routine was getting embarrassing." "Kelsey, that is a safe house," I said, every word shaking. "Do you understand what that means?" She scoffed. "Please, Brandon is not dangerous. You're being melodramatic like always. He assaulted me. He cracked my ribs. He has a restraining order. He is not supposed to know where I live." "You're so paranoid," she said. "I barely showed anything." "You showed the building number," I screamed. "You tagged the neighborhood." She went silent for a beat, then said, "Whatever. Maybe if you face some consequences, you'll stop making everything about yourself." Then she hung up. I stared at the blank screen until it blurred. My knees gave out, and I sat on the living room floor, shaking so violently I could barely breathe. I called Simone, then the police, and within hours I was packing everything again. Clothes, paperwork, the notebook with all my documentation, stuffing it into bags as officers waited outside in case Brandon appeared. I left in the middle of the night. Again. Back to zero. Again. A temporary room at a comfort inn. Again. And this time the threat hadn't come from the man who broke my ribs. It had come from the sister who claimed she loved me. But shock has a way of turning into clarity. As I sat on the hotel bed, staring at the glow of my laptop, scrolling through screenshots of Kelsey's video, her texts, her comments defending Brandon, something inside me shifted. Fear became anger. Anger became resolve. I opened a blank post on Facebook. I began to copy and paste every screenshot, every message, every piece of the timeline showing exactly what she had done. I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. My finger hovered over the post button, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. The moment before impact. My finger hovered above the post button for a long time. Long enough that my laptop screen dimmed twice. Long enough that I could hear the steady whoosh of the Comfort Inn air conditioning breathing in and out like a patient machine. Posting everything felt like detonating a bomb under my own family. But not posting felt like letting her, rewrite the story again, like she always did. Kelsey had written her version of my life in hashtags and filters. Brandon had written his in bruises and broken drywall. I had written mine in police reports, emergency orders, timestamps, and screenshots. For once, I wanted my truth to be louder. I clicked post. The ripple was immediate. Within minutes, my notifications exploded. Comments, private messages, shocked reactions from friends I hadn't talked to in years. Most people responded with horror and sympathy. Kelsey posted a comment under my timeline barely 10 minutes later. "She's exaggerating everything. It was one video. She's always been dramatic." Someone replied to her comment before I could. "You posted a safe house address. What is wrong with you?" Another wrote, "I work in social media. You never share someone's location without permission, especially not a DV survivor. This is unforgivable. Kelsey kept trying to defend herself, insisting she hadn't shown anything important, that Marina is making this a huge deal for attention. But nobody was buying it. Her friends, people who usually hyped her every post, went silent. A few even messaged me privately to apologize, saying they had no idea what she'd actually done. Word traveled fast, faster than I expected, faster than Kelsey could spin. By day 2, the fallout had grown teeth. Her employer, a digital marketing agency that loved branding itself as ethically conscious, launched an internal investigation. They sent her an email asking for a meeting with HR. She rage texted me all morning, claiming I was ruining her professional reputation, that I had humiliated her publicly. I didn't respond. By day 5, they fired her. She called me screaming, "You ruined my entire career. Do you even care what you did to me?" I stayed silent for a moment, then said, "No, Kelsey, you ruined your career when you posted my safe house online." "You're my sister," she snapped, voice cracking. "You're supposed to protect me." That was it. The moment something inside me finally snapped clean. "Like you protected me?" I said quietly. "When you dismissed my assault? When you told my abuser where our parents lived? When you gave him information about me for weeks? When you announced my safe location to the internet?" She went silent on the other end of the phone, not speechless, strategizing. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she finally said. I hung up. The public fallout didn't stop with her. Some of our parents' landscaping clients, people who had known our family for years, commented on my post too, saying how disturbing the situation was. A few major clients, including Riverside Plaza and Thornhill Country Club, quietly canceled their contracts within 10 days. Not enough to sink the business, but enough to hurt. My father finally called. "Marina, this is getting out of hand," he said, exhaustion dragging at every word. "Can we all just move forward?" "Move forward from what?" I asked. "From your daughter endangering my life? From you and Mom letting Brandon into your house? Or from you pretending none of this matters?" "We're family," he insisted in that tone parents use when they want obedience dressed as unity. "Family doesn't put each other in danger," I said. "Family doesn't defend abusers." Mom tried a different tactic. Lengthy texts about forgiveness, about healing, about how Kelsey was devastated and struggling after losing her job. "Has she apologized?" I asked. A long pause. "Well, she feels terrible." "That's not an apology," I said. "That's an excuse." Silence again. That silence told me everything I needed to know. While the public fallout roasted Kelsey alive, the legal fallout was just beginning. Lawrence, the family law attorney Simone recommended, reviewed everything. Screenshots, correspondence, timestamps, police reports. His frown deepened with every new page. "Your sister's actions constitute reckless endangerment," he said, "and she knowingly violated the shelter program's confidentiality instructions. You have a very strong civil case." I wasn't sure at first. Suing my own sister felt nuclear, but then I remembered the note on my car. Brandon's Mustang circling the P.O. box. The police knocking on my safe house door. The lawsuit wasn't revenge. It was survival. We filed. During the discovery process, we obtained copies of Kelsey's messages, some with mutual friends, some with Brandon. That was how I learned the worst truth. She hadn't just posted the TikTok once. Kelsey had visited the safe house twice before filming that video. She had taken multiple photos and short clips. She had compared which angles showed the building number best. She had tagged Sterling Heights intentionally to increase engagement. But the real betrayal was the messages with Brandon. Weeks of feeding him information about me. Not my location at first, but my therapy times, my emotional state, my routines, what days Simone visited, whether I seemed dramatic or normal. She had been his informant. Not because she wanted to hurt me, but because she wanted to prove I was exaggerating. Because she wanted to be right. When confronted during her deposition, Kelsey broke. Tears streamed down her face as she said, "I just wanted people to see she was fine. She was ruining every family dinner with all this drama." Brandon seemed genuinely sorry, and she wouldn't even consider talking to him. "So," Lawrence asked mildly, "you endangered your sister's life to make family dinners more comfortable?" "I didn't think he would actually do anything," she sobbed. "I thought if he saw her and nothing happened, she'd realize she was overreacting." There it was. She had turned my life into a twisted social experiment. The judge was unmoved. The civil judgment came down hard. $68,000 for emotional distress, relocation costs, security measures, and legal fees. Kelsey didn't have the money. She sold her Mazda CX-5, then moved back in with our parents. Her social media presence shriveled overnight. No brand wanted to work with someone whose online behavior endangered a domestic violence survivor. That was her downfall. Brandon's came next. His restraining order violation, combined with documented stalking behaviors, landed him in county jail for 14 months. Not as long as I wanted, but longer than he ever expected. At sentencing, the judge listed his pattern of control, intimidation, and violence in a tone closer to disgust than neutrality. Brandon's mother approached me afterward in the hallway, a small, tired woman with grief etched into every line of her face. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "We should have believed you. We should have stopped him years ago." I nodded, unsure what to say. Her apology didn't erase anything, but it didn't wound me either. It just passed through me like a cold breeze. When I stepped out of the courthouse into the afternoon light, the sky seemed too bright, too indifferent to the wreckage scattered behind me. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something like steadiness beneath my feet. Not peace, not yet, but steadiness. It was enough. When I stepped out of the courthouse into the afternoon sun, I felt strangely weightless. Not free. Freedom implies an unburdening I hadn't achieved yet, but lighter. As if something I'd been carrying for years had finally loosened its grip. I walked down the stone steps slowly, letting the reality settle. Brandon was behind bars. Kelsey had finally faced consequences she couldn't charm or argue her way out of. My parents could no longer pretend everything was fine. But most importantly, I had chosen myself. The days that followed were quiet in a way I hadn't realized I needed. No texts from Brandon, no unpredictable outbursts, no guilt-soaked lectures from my mother about keeping the family together. The silence wasn't scary anymore. It was space. It was mine. My new safe location, a separate placement arranged by Simone after the TikTok incident, felt different from the last one. The building was taller, more secure, with a doorman who always greeted me with a polite smile and never asked personal questions. The apartment itself was on the 3rd floor, overlooking a courtyard with a fountain that ran all day. Sometimes I stood at the balcony just listening to the water because it reminded me that peace could exist in the world, even when you couldn't feel it inside yourself. I unpacked carefully, intentionally. Books first, clothes next, important documents in a locked drawer. The last thing I brought out was a small ceramic dish shaped like a seashell, something my dad had given me when I was 12 after a beach trip. I set it on my nightstand and stared at it for a long time, feeling nothing. Not warmth, not resentment, just the faint recognition of something I'd once cared about. A few weeks later, I adopted a cat from the shelter, a round orange tabby with bright green eyes and a crooked left ear. The shelter staff told me his name was already Waffles, and I didn't have the heart to change it. Waffles greeted me at the door every evening, bounding over like I'd been gone a year instead of a few hours. He slept on my chest sometimes, a warm, purring weight that grounded me in the present more than any meditation exercise ever had. The first real sign of my healing wasn't the promotion or the new apartment, though. It was how my body stopped flinching every time a notification buzzed on my phone. When I returned to work after 4 months of leave, my manager greeted me with a long exhale, like he'd been waiting to say something. "Marina, your attention to detail during the investigation. It was remarkable," he said. "We'd like to promote you to claims supervisor." I blinked at him, thinking I'd misheard. "During my leave?" He nodded. "We reviewed your documentation skills, your casework, your past audits. You've always gone above and beyond. This role is overdue." For a moment, the room blurred at the edges. All my life, competence had been the thing that grounded me, the thing no one could twist or minimize. To have it recognized now, when I felt so fractured, was something close to grace. But growth doesn't happen in a straight line. Healing isn't poetic. Some days I felt strong. Other days I woke up in a sweat, heart racing from dreams where Brandon burst through every locked door. Dr. Castellano reassured me that trauma doesn't evaporate just because justice happens. It lingers. It shifts shape. She also taught me something even harder. Guilt is not the same as responsibility. For months, I had felt guilty for suing Kelsey. Guilty for the fallout. Guilty for the strain between my parents. But none of those outcomes were consequences I created. They were consequences Kelsey set in motion and refused to stop. That realization changed something fundamental in me. Around the 8th month after the lawsuit, I attended my first domestic violence survivor support group, the one Simone had mentioned. The room was small, warm, lined with chairs in a circle. Women shared stories of partners who isolated them, belittled them, monitored them, manipulated them. But the part that shocked me most was how many of them had families who dismissed their fear, pressured them to work it out, or sent abusers their whereabouts just to be helpful. I wasn't an anomaly. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't the problem. Something in me unlocked. And a few months later, I applied to become a certified peer advocate. The training was intense. Hours of coursework on safety planning, trauma responses, legal processes, empathy without over-identification. But it was also the first place in years where I felt not just safe, but useful. "You're one of the best advocates I've ever seen," Simone told me during one of our check-ins. "You understand both the emotional manipulation and the system itself. That combination is rare." Her words sat with me in the good way, the way sunlight settles into cold skin. My parents reached out occasionally, mostly my father, who sent messages like, "Hope you're doing well," and "Your mother and I miss you." My mother never apologized. She only sent vague suggestions that we try to move forward, which was her way of saying she wanted the illusion of family harmony restored without doing any of the uncomfortable repair work underneath it. I never blocked them, but I didn't go back either. And Kelsey, well, 19 months passed with no contact from her beyond the occasional text complaining about how difficult her life had become since everything fell apart. Not once did she say the words, "I'm sorry." Not once did she acknowledge the severity of what she had done. She was working as a barista now, living with our parents, posting only sporadically online because nobody trusted her judgment anymore. Every message she sent dripped with self-pity. I didn't respond, not because I was angry, but because I was done. One afternoon, maybe a year after the dust settled, I ran into my mother at the grocery store. She was standing in front of a display of oranges, comparing prices. When she saw me, her expression froze. Then she turned her cart down another aisle without a word. For the first time in my life, I felt absolutely nothing about it. Not a sting, not an ache, not a longing. Just nothing. And that nothing felt, strangely, like peace. The final court hearing for Brandon's extended restraining order happened last month. He stood in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, expression as entitled as ever. When the judge read the order, 5 more years, Brandon turned and glared at me like I had wronged him. I met his gaze. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. Eventually, he did. After the hearing, I walked out into the parking lot, the autumn air crisp, Waffles' vet appointment reminder buzzing on my phone. It felt like a different lifetime from the night I had sat in a safe house, shaking over a TikTok video. Sometimes when I meet with survivors now, they tell me their families want them to give him another chance, or that their siblings accuse them of exaggerating. I look them in the eyes and say, "Your safety matters more than anyone's comfort. You're not crazy. You're not dramatic. You're surviving." And when they ask if I think family can ever truly make up for the betrayal of exposing a safe location, I give them the same answer I give myself every night when I lock my apartment door, feed Waffles his evening treat, and sit down to a life that finally feels like my own. No, and I'm finally okay with that.